Our ambition is to be the world's largest and trusted provider of sustainable solutions, and we at Nature Positive are excited to be a part of that. This means sustainability has to become mainstream in the way we operate, not just in the work that we deliver to our clients, but right across our value chain. Sustainability needs to be instinctive, it needs to be mainstream in what we do as a business. It's really interesting to look at what we mean by sustainability. I think it has a perception that we're talking about banning plastic straws and using electric cars. But if you break down the word sustainability into its two component parts, it's sustain and ability. As a business, it's about our ability to sustain ourselves over the long term in the face of the triple planetary crisis of climate breakdown, biodiversity destruction and pollution. Best place to start is by understanding what your impacts and dependencies are on the natural world, and they will be varied and complex and difficult to understand, but it's really important you make a first attempt. And what those impacts and dependencies mean in terms of business risk and opportunity. You then, considering those business risks and opportunities, think about what you want for your business in the long term, and you embed and take these considerations into your business strategy in the long term and your day-to-day operations in the short term. All companies need to address three main things, and that is nature, climate and people. And if they are thinking about all those three things at the same time, then they're really making a difference in terms of how they're moving forward with their sustainability agenda. So climate, that is about making meaningful cuts to your carbon emissions and potentially offsetting the small amount of residual emissions you can't easily get rid of. When it comes to people, businesses have been thinking about societal impacts and social value for a long time. But really, we need to think about that from the perspective of the entire value chain of your business. Your supply chain, for example, that might be on the other side of the world that has particular human rights issues. And then thirdly, it's nature, so it's biodiversity and water in particular. So really trying to understand what your impacts on nature are, but also what your dependencies on nature are. This backlash we've seen against ESG is really hard to fathom why that's happened, and I think in the US in particular it has particular political drivers and connotations. Sustainability and the ESG agenda, as I said, isn't a nice to have, it's an essential, and it's certainly not a bad to have. We're talking about our ability to sustain ourselves on this planet as a business, as a community, and so the ESG agenda has to be the most important thing that businesses are thinking about right now.